Hey everybody, BTO Pro here, and today I'm going to be making fun of you because you don't know how to use Google. No, seriously. So you are going to get experience with the terminal window, which you probably should have already had access to, but Chromebooks throughout all of like growing up in high school, if you had access to Chromebooks because you went to a good enough school to afford them for you, they intentionally locked down access to an actual operating system. So as I've found, no one knows how to actually operate system, yo. So I'm on Ubuntu, kind of primed for people that work in operating system land, but it's kind of gonna be similar. You use PowerShell, terminal prompt, command prompt, administrative console. Like search for these words for how do I access thing lol in your operating system of choice. Also, not required, but very useful. Also, will just help with your general understanding of needing to get at these layers of the stack. If you install Oh My Zush, so or ohmyz.sh is the address here. It tells you how to go about installing Oh My Zush. It'll probably give you a command like this. And if you don't have access to a terminal to do these commands, then we start to Google things like how do I install curl. So reading this line, what is happening here is sh is short for bash, or it's going to run a script. It's going to execute this command in line, which is in this quotes, and then it's going to kind of cascade into another program. So it's going to download this script from this location. Now, generally speaking, this is pretty dangerous. You shouldn't do stuff like this if someone gives you this, but you could go and look and see what the scripting language is. And this is the scripting language as written in bash, right? And at the top of a file, we'll see something like this, implying this is the program that's going to be run. So similar to the parallel, if you click an icon on your desktop and it runs a thing, that's effectively what it's doing. Is when you're doing, sh command, it's more or less invoking like, hey, open this, and running a program in the terminal. So I already have Oh My Zush installed, but some just general navigation basics when working with the terminal. Let me make this even larger. So if I type ls, that's going to give me a listing. If I type dir in Windows land, if ls command doesn't work, that's usually the parallel. I like to type ls hyphen las. So the hyphen is implying there are options and arguments passed into the command. That's going to give you this nice spread here that says, it's more of a folder view, if you will. Now, another thing, and again, this is going to vary. If you go to run this command and it doesn't work, then you're going to kind of have to say, how do I do? But most of these commands should just work. If you type the word open and then a space and a period, this is saying open a Finder window at this location. And so I'm on Ubuntu, but this should work on Mac and Windows as well. It opened up the GUI-based way to get here. So in this case, I'm at home directory, documents, git, elms-ln, in this case, edtech joker, this is the name of the folder I have. So home directory, if you ever need to go to your home, that is your user account on the system. So we need to start trying to figure out how to make sort of a mental model of what it is we're working with, right? We have a mental model where we go and click the start menu, or you click the little happy face on OS X, or you just open up Spotlight and start searching. This is all connected to a directory tree under the hood. If I type pwd, I don't remember what that stands for, but pwd is going to tell me exactly where I am right now. So there isn't just home directory, it's /home, at least in Ubuntu, although it's very similar in OS X because that's built on Unix, and it's similar in Windows because they're just starting to blatantly copy the conventions that everybody else aligned with. So, well, starting to, they've been doing it a while. So /home /BTO108A /documents /git, right? This is the path I'm in currently, right? Which I have open there. Now, if I type cd, that is for changing directory. In my terminal, and this will probably have some, variation, color coding, things like that. But if I have a file, right, all the files as shown here are presented in green, and all the folders are presented in blue. Even this dot git, which is actually dot, is an easy way that the operating systems hide files. Now, I've done some stuff that forces the files to be shown, but if I type ls for list, the dot files do not show up. It's a common convention. Anything with a dot is not going to be shown by default. It's for developers, it's configuration settings. However, your developers and you need to edit configuration settings, and normal people don't go and use terminal. So, kind of some history of computers evolution there. So in this case, if I type ls-las, or if I type ls, I probably can do -- help. And you're going to get this massive amount of like, hey, here's all the options that you can do. On almost every command ever, you can type whatever the command name is, space -- help, sometimes -h, and it'll give you all the very, very, very broken down options. Now, in the case of L, right, long listing format is what I'm doing there. A should be up here. Show everything. Do not ignore entries starting with a dot. That's how I get those to show up because I care about those. And S is size, print the allocated size of each file. Now, you don't really need the S probably. You're probably going to be good with ls-la, and that'll show most of this. I end up needing the S command as far as seeing what the size of files is, right? So you can see the difference between this. It prints the size of the file, especially when I'm doing certain debugging, pushing code up into a Git repo, or it gets published to NPM, and I have this package that's 23 megs when I didn't expect it to be. It's an easy way for me to find configuration files or cache files that got excessively large and blow them away, that sort of a thing. So ls-la, that's going to give you this nice printout. Some things will shortcut this as ll. If I need to move around these directories, or I need to know where I am right now, type pwd. Oh, there I am. Okay, I'm in this folder. I have my mental context. I need to go down a folder. I do cd, which is short for change directory, space, .. Now I do ls, las, and I see the folders at that level. Now, let's say I want to go into Hack CMS, which is a platform we'll at least mess with or hopefully contribute to this semester. I type cd hacks CMS, or here I'm going to type hacks in the letter C. If you don't do this in class, I will harass you at some point because I harass literally everyone. Those keystrokes take time. Every key I'm typing, even though I type ridiculously fast because of coffee and experience, takes time. Save yourself your valuable time. Be as lazy a developer as possible. Type the thing in the mental model that then you go, it's the only available option. And then hit the tab key. So hitting tab is going to autocomplete the rest of whatever the thing is there. Another nice shortcut, if I put, and I'm going to push up and down, the up and down arrows on the keyboard, but if I push up, it's going to go up through the commands I typed in order, every single one of these, so that if I start to form a mental model of, oh gosh, I can't remember, that was a really long command, it was something with copying a directory from here to here, I can start to go back up through the tree. Another really nice thing, and this starts to get into stuff that Oh My Zush is giving you, is we're going to work with Git at times on the command line, probably via GUI for most of you, to be perfectly honest. But let's say I type Git, in this case I would type space. If I push up, Oh My Zush is now working with that, scrolling back up the history and saying, well, the last time you typed Git, the next thing you would have typed was commit m. And now I can go back up and cycle through just the commands associated with that as the starting point. If you get to a situation like this, where you're like, there's something running, it's stopped, or like, I don't want the cursor there, you could move the cursor back and forth. Or if I hit Control C, for some of you, it's going to end up being like Function C or Option C. Like this, there's some variation between platforms. But Control C is going to clear this current execution. So I type a bunch of stuff and go, oh, shoot, I misspelled something good. I hit Control C, dumps me out of that, so I don't have to sit there. Again, your time is valuable. The keystrokes are valuable. Thinking about these things is valuable. You're being lucky to be here. ls, las, cool. All right, I'm in this directory for hack CMS, cd ... If you have Oh My Zush, every additional dot you do is going to go backwards another folder. That is not a real convention when it comes to a command line. It's specific to Oh My Zush in this case. what you could have done instead is, well, okay, so now let's go forward. So I'm sort of lost. Like, oh crap, where am I? All right, I want to go to my home directory. Now, right now I'm in slash home. I'm not going to show you all the different accounts on this computer, which is what this would expose if I would type LL. What you can do at any time if you don't know where you are and you don't know how to get back to somewhere, or it's just as a shortcut, you do cd space tilde. Cd space tilde is going to put you in the tilde directory. This is a shortcut for your home directory. So that just moved me into my home directory on this machine as I'm working on it. So a lot of times I'll be in a directory, type ls, lass. You can also do symbolically linked things, which is what this little pointer thing, we're not really going to get into that, but just for funsies. You can also remove everything. Any operation you can do via the GUI, in this case, your operating system, is basically just executing one of these commands on your behalf. So, for example, if I type the word touch cool-file.md, now I will have something called cool-file, and I can right there, right? I'm going to go run a program, in this case code, which some of your computers will already come with, some of them won't. If you don't have a command, then that's where we're Googling and saying, how do I get the code on the terminal to work? Right, so code, if I do tab, and there's a lot of options in this case, now I'm tabbing between them, hit enter, and it's going to autocomplete that line. I hit enter, and in this case, I have code is mapped to VS Code. It's a common convention. I think you could Google, how do I get VS Code to respond on terminal? And it'll say, like, click these buttons. There's like 3 things you end up doing to set it up. So that just quickly jumps to files. Another thing I like to do to save time, right? So CD, I go in my head, oh, going back to home directory, documents, and then I'm going to go to, in this case, I have a Git folder. In this case, I have that, right? So as you start to learn the mental model, right, I've only hit like 5 keys to get there. And so if it seems like I navigate these things extremely quickly, or you ever are concerned, like, how did you just do that, or how did you know that command? Some of it is just having a mental model of what the computer's structure is. So early on, especially, I'm going to really harp on, you need to set up your folders in this way. And you need that way, as you're setting up the folders, you're creating your own mental model for how you want to work with this stuff. I could go back and find you the files that I worked on in 2005 because I started establishing a mental model for how I interface with my own computer and work files versus personal files versus fill in the blank, right? Way back then. Now I have those in a Dropbox because I'm put those on personal files on here, so I can go to the Dropbox folder, and then I go from Dropbox, down to school, and then down to 2006, and then fall, and then this course number. Whatever that mental model is, start to establish one for your projects. So I have all of my code projects in a folder called Git because they're in version control, and then I have them within the GitHub organization ID or personal ID, as based on where I work on that project from. So I'm going to go to, in this case, WC Factory, which is another one of our projects. I can hit code space period. That tells VS Code, open a VS Code editing instance at this directory tree. So when we type cd ... that's saying go down, change directory down 1, ... change directory down 2, down 3. And now I could also hit tab and start to get the autocomplete. Oh, I actually wanted to go into Git and then tab, right? So you can start to string this stuff together without cd thing list. Oh, there it is. Cd thing list. Oh, there it is. And do things in milliseconds versus seconds and minutes at times. It seems like I'd be harping on that a lot, but the faster you type, the faster you get to these directories, the faster you get done with the thing, and the faster you hang out and play video games or do whatever other fun thing, go for a run. Whatever you want to do that is not working with machines. We want these machines to stay here for as little as possible. All right, so I'm going to exit out of that command. All right, I showed you open, showed you code before. If I did cd, whoops, I love that, cd period, right? So there is kind of like a fake file. If we look at this thing, ls, right? The first one is period. It's saying it's a folder. That is a self-reference. A little weird, but it's a self-reference in the file system. ... is a reference or pointer back to the previous thing ahead of us. I can actually navigate into .git or node modules, directories, things like that. Help if I spell the right way. And in the case of Git, there is actually a structure under here as far as branches. We can see nothing in branches. Let's under refs maybe. Right? Oh, remotes, origin. There we go. Oh, and there's master. So why I point to this specific example here of skipping into that in the Git directory. We're going to run commands at times. It's going to say things like git pull. Okay, so the first program is git. The command within that program is pull. Origin, which is what I just navigated to say this is the place that we're getting this data. Branch, in this case, is master or main, both kind of interchangeable. So these things, when we just type commands, we're not just like typing random stuff. This is relating to programs on the file system, which I just went to that folder, right? We can see there's some program definition here called master, right? And so we're running the program git in this case, or running the program change directory, or open, or code, or node.js, or npm install, or npm publish, or npm init, any of these other things, and they're programs running within a certain command set that tie to physical files. There's always files and things there as references. So it's not just magic. That also means you can Google these things. The first time you do this stuff, you're certainly not comfortable with it. I don't fault you if you're uncomfortable with it. I will just point out, like, hey, you could have used a shortcut there. You could have done this. And that will just take repetition. I'm going to make this feel pretty seamless. I can type with my eyes closed with about 95% accuracy. That is 30 some odd years of typing on a keyboard experience multiplied by working in the same field. That's just the way it's going to be. So if you have questions or issues in working at this level of directory tree, please feel free to ask. It's part of why I made this video. Two last sort of common commands. I'll say they're more tangential. So let's make it's actually like 3 commands. So I'm going to make a file. So I will touch example. Here we go. Touch is just effectively create this file. So now there should be a file, and it'll, if I do ls example, and we see it's 0 bytes, right? So it's a completely empty file. It was made at this time on this date. It's owned by me, and the group is me. It's a little weird, but you can have files that you make, but that are under a different group ownership. So, example, there's staff members. You are part of staff. You created the file, though, so you have supreme rights on that file. Then there's staff. So anyone else on the staff that's on that machine also can access. Over here in the left column is what I did not mention before. This is read, write, execute. And the read, write, execute boils down to a number. You'll see this expressed as like 777, 744, 755, 750, things like that. It has to do with the configuration of read, write, and execute rights per group on the machine. So the first block of these, read, write, execute. Now, there's no reason to execute that, but if it was a program, it would make sense, right? So at the moment, we see void. So there's nothing there for that. Read, write, and this would be execute. There were no execute rights on example because it's not a program. Okay, the first block of these 3, ignore that first one. The first block of these 3 is me. So those my rights. Then the next block, read, write, execute. That's on the group. Then the last block, in this case, is read, can't write, can't execute. That means any anonymous user of this machine, which there's no anonymous user, but any other user of this machine that does not satisfy owner or group can still read the file. It's not, a security issue in this case. If I need to change permissions on that in some way, I can do chmod, which is modifying or changing the permissions in this case. I'm going to modify, and we're going to say modify on example. Oh, I have to do it this way, John. I'm going to say 777. Sure, this is the least secure way you can set something up. So I'm going to modify the permissions to be 777 on the file example. So when I put that in, it changed this now. See, so we have read, write, execute, rewrite, execute. Now everybody can read this file and write it and execute, which means you could run it as a program. Now, there's nothing in there to run. So if I type bash example, it didn't do anything, but it's executable now because I have it set as that permission. 777 is the most dangerous way you could set something. Generally, you don't do that. At times during certain installers, that may be the only way to get something to go through on some initial permission settings. Generally, you do not want to run that though. So I'm going to do chmod 664 example. Let me see, and you can look these up. That's part of why it's a very brief overview. Right, I got rewrite, read, write, and in this case, read. The 4 is read. If something is 5, that means it's read and execute, and something is 6, that means it's write and read, and if something is 7, and so those relate to a number effectively, right? So read is 4, so 4 plus 2 is 6, 4 plus 2 plus 1, 7. But that way you could also, the reason that's 4 is so you can get all the number combinations. You could have something that is not readable, but is writable and is executable, right? So you have 1, 2, that equals 3, or you could just have executable, which is weird. That would be, you can't read it, but you can run it. That would be 1. 2 would be that you can write to something but not read it, which would be very bizarre, but you could, I guess, theoretically have something set up that way. Anyway, another way you can change permissions is changing the group ownership, like who owns this file, and that would be ch own. So chown, and I'm going to say root colon etl108a and example. Changing ownership of example origin not permitted. All right. So if you get some permission error, you go to run something. In this case, I can't make something owned by root. I don't actually even know the user on here, but that would be where sudo comes in. Sudo is execute on behalf of the root user. That means you're putting in administrative privileges in some way that is going to, if it matches, run that command as that super user that one time. So that went through. And now I've modified the root. The reason I can't actually assign something to a user that is superior to me in that case. Sudo, and now I won't be able to unassign this without sudo because, well, that user is superior to me and they own that file. But this is kind of like saying, hey, do this on behalf of this one time. And so we're going to do in this case, example. Okay, back to example. Some other command, I could do CP is for copy, and do example to example 2. Right, so now we have example and example 2. I can do RM example, and then again, tab auto completed, but then now I have two things, so I can pick between them. Right, RM got rid of that. Another real dangerous thing is the flags on remove. So if you're going to delete a folder, for example, if I did RM node modules, you can't do that, it's a directory. I could do it if I added flags to it. So R and F. This is saying remove recursively and by force everything you find under there. That is a very dangerous command. For example, if you accidentally ran RM space hyphen RF space /*, it would say recursively, forcibly remove everything in every folder on this machine. Now, the permissions would kick in. A lot of those files wouldn't get destroyed, but a hell of a lot of them would. So these are, you're at a level below the GUI. You can do things the GUI is never going to expose to you. So be aware of that. Don't just run commands that you find on the internet without having some semblance of what this command might do. And if you're ever concerned, just ask. Now, another thing you might commonly do is if you have to rename or move something, So MB is for move, is the rename command. I'm going to move example to example, blah, 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 bunch of stuff. Okay, and that move that file from there to there. You could also then chain these different commands together to do things, right? So I could say, well, move example to dot slash example, then slash example. And now that would be placing that folder 2 directories below me inside the Elms directory and renamed as this. So this stuff can all work together. I'm not going to go into some of the more advanced things like wget, cat. There's ways of, if you can get a file on here, right? There's a command for it. So if there's something you don't know how to do, a lot of times the how do I download a file using terminal commands, right? How do I download a file from a website via terminal? Yeah, I want to copy from this remote source. Oh, hey, wget. Hey, you should make sure you use wget, right? There's going to be answers like that. And you're encouraged to do things this way. If you have some question of how do I get thing to thing, anything with terminal or anything where you go, I don't know how I do this via the user interface. I'm not saying you can't use your user interface, but terminal, if you learn it, is going to be way faster. So that is my intro to commands, things like that. You probably watched it at 1.5x speed, stopped and paused whenever you were looking for something. If you're still lost when using the terminal or you're having some real issues, this is where we got TAs, LAs, and me. But make sure you'll watch through this, use the shortcuts, save yourself time, and enjoy the semester.